My first instinct was I felt like a hypocrite because I had publicly said that I don't like this trend.
How does AI help you? Does it?
My costume was really heavy. It was like 90 pounds.
This is the first time for him as a director of a live action movie. How did you feel about it?
Save Family. Aí, ó, esse aqui é um episódio especial, porque não é todo dia que você tem a oportunidade de conversar com Gerard Butler e com o Deblois. Gerard Butler você deve conhecer lá do filme 300, de vários outros filmes que ele já fez também. E o Dean, cara, é o cara que fez o Mulan, fez Lilo Stitch e fez também Como Treinar Seu Dragão, a trilogia de animação e agora o live action também, que é o filme que eles vieram falar sobre aqui no Brasil, e a gente teve a oportunidade de trocar uma ideia com eles, assim, bastante interessante. E a gente falou bastante sobre esse filme, mas também falamos sobre as percepções deles sobre filmes de live action que estão surgindo pra caramba agora também, e talvez outros filmes de dragões e tudo mais. Cara, foi um papo muito maneiro e eu aposto que tu vai se amarrar.
Thanks for the opportunity of talking to me.
It's our pleasure to be here.
Well, no, thanks. You have no idea how much I'm still having some trouble believing this is real, you know. The guy who you've made so many movies that I watched with my kids, and you've been in my history, guy, man. You have no idea, you know. One thing I was expecting from this movie was a moment where you would kick a dragon and say, "This is Burke." But that didn't happen.
I asked for it, but he said, no, it's been done. But I want to do that in every movie, an opportunity to kick somebody and scream something, but you know.
This is something.
This is, yeah.
Well, it would be cool. It would be cool. But talking about this movie, first of all, how did you feel when Universal went and asked you guys to be in this this live action of How to Train Your Dragon? How did you feel, you know?
Well, my first instinct was I felt like a hypocrite because I had publicly said that I don't like this trend.
I read that.
Of making live action films out of animated classics, in part because I'm an animator, mm-hmm. and so it always felt like an insult to the medium that they would just come in with a whole new group of people uh-huh. and create a film on the shoulders of all the hard work that was done to make it a classic in the first place. But in this case, Universal came to me. They didn't go to another director. They went to the person who had been involved in writing and directing the original. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity to maybe put my convictions to the test, because I do think we could make the story richer and we could make the relationships stronger and the characterization deeper and expand the mythology and use all of the tools and the language of live action to make it more immersive, by creating this sort of grounded reality where photoreal dragons could mix among humans. And so the idea of Gerard Butler stepping into the role of Stoic, but for real, with all of that mass and
Stoic, the vast.
Yeah.
Right?
Stoico immenso.
Stoico o immenso.
Oh, Stoic o immenso.
Yes. But in the movie, you seem a little more vast, right?
Yeah.
Is it because of the?
No, I'm so committed as an actor that I put on 300 extra pounds, which I then had to lose right after. No, not. No, weirdly, I didn't put as much thought into it as I thought. I just knew, I was, of course, going to make this movie. I wasn't going to not work with Dean again and not have a chance to fill those boots. Uh-huh. But it wasn't until I got there and they started putting the costume on that I went, didn't think of this. I'd forgotten that I was 5 feet wide and, literally
Vast.
about 400 pounds. Uh-huh. So my costume was really heavy. It was like 90 pounds when I had my axe and my shield. And that was a lot to deal with. I remember the first costume fitting was 4 hours long. And by the end, my back was breaking. And I don't know if I told you this, but I literally was like, this movie is huge and it's going to fall apart. And it's going to be all over the press. You panic. Worst case scenario, it's going to be all over the press because Gerry Butler can't wear the costume. So then it was weight vests every day in the hotel, everywhere to get used to that weight. And then I grew to love it because it was immenso.
Yes.
And I could transform. Like once I put that on, once I stepped into this world that they built.
How different it is from voicing Stoic and then being Stoic, there's especially many years after that, many years from the first time.
I mean, it's different, obviously. In some ways, you are pretty clear, because you are now, it's all of you, it's every movement. It's how you, there's no hiding behind anything, whereas in the studio. However, I mean, you remember this moment way back when we were making the animated movies, and when you showed me this, it really helped, because I always thought it's just my voice in the animation. And I always questioned why they had cameras in the room. We're talking years ago. And then one day, it was Christoph, my chief animator. He showed me the animated Stoic in a scene. I think it was that one. Odin, it was rough. And then they showed me what I did, and everything, my facial expression, Odin, it was rough. I almost gave up. And I went, oh, damn, there's a lot more of me in there, which helped my confidence in the animated movies. But yes, to step into this and both appreciate the opportunity and the challenges of having to give a much more layered and real and truthful performance, and where, it's kind of all on your shoulders, literally.
Yes, 90 pounds. That's a lot on your shoulders.
It was a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
But it felt amazing to stand there, to walk out,
yeah.
and nobody else had that kind of costume. To stand out there in front of hundreds of Vikings going, he's definitely the chief. He's definitely a warrior, has that power. And then to use all of that, and then also to play small and to go everything in between, it was great.
Cool. But then you were talking about, this chance of making this movie, you were able to maybe dig a little deeper into Norse lore and stuff to maybe expand and give it a little more punch, or develop some more, some characters. But how much did you really go studying Norse lore and stuff to
It's not so much the lore. It was more about the Viking history, because as we kind of looked around and we realized how far the Vikings actually sailed and traveled, they intermingled with so many different cultures. They were in the Far East. They were along the Silk Road. They were in the Mediterranean. They went to North Africa. They had names for all of these places because they had traded with these cultures. And when you look a little deeper, obviously in Asia, there are lots of legends of dragons, but even in Africa, there are legends of dragons. And so for us, it presented an opportunity, like, what if dragons were a problem everywhere? And what if the Vikings took the initiative to gather the best dragon fighting warriors from all of these different cultures? And that's why they're on this island.
I see.
They've come to this place because they know there's a major dragon's nest close. And if they can find it, together with all of their skill, they can take out the dragons. But it's several generations later now when we pick up the story. And all of these warriors are dispirited, they're tired, they're always getting beaten at their own game, and they just want to go home. And so now there's more pressure on Chief Stoic, because he has inherited this responsibility as chief of the tribe, and he's trying to kind of, gather their spirits and rouse them again, and, be this kind of politician / chief, while also dealing with the fact that he has a son who is always getting in trouble, always in the wrong place. He's an embarrassment. He's not following the Viking tradition. So he has great pressure. He's a single father, and not a very good one at the time.
Thank you.
but also like the chief that has to keep everyone together to follow the mission. And that allowed us to expand the mythology.
Well, by the way, he's almost like the football coach in a bad movie, where he's like, his team are bottom of the league, but he thinks of the top. He's like, let's go. And the guys are like, we're going to lose again. We keep losing.
Yeah.
We're not that good. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And he's always trying different tactics. How do I get him this time? How do I keep him going? Which is a deeper, more meaningful, I guess, responsibility, because he does have to look after the tribe, and he does, have to make sure they are fed and they're not overrun by dragons. But there was some nice humor to be gotten from this guy trying everything to keep his people going. Let's warriors.
Yeah, there's that meeting, right, in the movie where you Stoic goes and try to cheer everyone up and let's go fight dragons and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
But as a parent, one thing that's pretty close to my heart is the relationship between Stoic and Hiccup, and how Stoic expects something from him that he's not, and that the movie makes it pretty clear. But I was thinking, I mean, developing this relationship and making it work, and how does it feel to be able to tell all these different themes and different important human emotions and feelings to the audience? Is it easier to make it in a live action movie?
Well, I think the definite benefit of live action is that when you have someone like Gerard and when you have Mason, who's a wonderful young but very intuitive actor, you get so many textures and so many nuances within a scene that for me, as a director, I can stand back and just let the scene develop. You know, watch them figure out the chemistry and the language of gestures and movements and silences, that it takes on its own shape, much more than we can manipulate it in animation.
Well, it also must be a privilege to, I mean, we were talking before, since this is your first live action feature film, right?
Yes.
Having Gerard Butler and all that cast must be amazing. Must be easier, make things easier, right?
It is. It is.
What for you, Dean? This is the first time for him as a director of a live action movie. How did you feel about it? I mean, I know you're friends and you're going to say nice things.
Well, don't ask me the question then. So you can only say bad things. Well, let me tell you what's bad about Dean. No. I would say nice things because, and I have to say, watching the movie last night, this feels very gushing, but I was sitting there going, God, I've been doing press next to him. And I feel like there's not enough I can say about the masterpiece that I'm watching. Mm-hmm. And that is a masterpiece in terms of visually, how cinematic it is, but in terms of every character, to think that he penned that, he created those moments. There's stories within stories within stories. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a moment is wasted. There's not a moment that is not moving you, entertaining you, making you laugh, a callback. So there's every character you go on such a journey with, and there's just, your breath is taken away. And that's all down to, I do my job as stoic, but in terms of the production design, the special effects, the story, the characters, the direction, and I was remembering last night, because there was that what I love with Dean is I know him so well. We have such a shorthand, so I know how to play, and I know he's going to let me play, but he's not going to let me play that much. He knows where he wants me to go. Mm-hmm. But there's never a wasted moment. So even when we were filming, there might be moments I want to indulge a little bit. Shouldn't I take longer for this? It's like, no, there's the moment. Let's keep it tight. And that's what I was really noticing last night when I watched it. There isn't a moment that isn't fulfilling you in some way. There's no fat. There's just, you're just in it. And I feel like the difference maybe with the animated movies, I love the animated movies, but often they're making a point and they're making that point in that moment. I feel here, there can be many different points being made just because of the nuance and the color that you can get from real people performing and from an actual realistic background. It is also a fantastical background that I feel like it's definitely a richer, visual experience, but it's also a much richer and more truthful, authentic, emotional experience.
Yeah. Now, there must have been some challenges there is How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, and the other one, since we're talking about this one, the 2010 movie, it was such a huge success that there must have been some challenges from old fans, and you still need to reach new audiences. So I suppose, I've watched this movie, and I can say that every fan of How to Train Your Dragon is going to enjoy this one as well, right? But what challenges, what choices did you have to make this one faithful to the original one, but still bring out some of your vision? Because you told me that you didn't have as much time you would like to in the first one, but this one is different.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, I think you're touching on it exactly, which is there is a fan base for How to Train Your Dragon. Mm-hmm. And I think when it was announced that we were going to make a live action film, a lot of the reaction was, please don't, you're going to ruin my childhood. it's going to be another soulless
That's what usually
cash
happens.
grab. It's going to ruin something that's beautiful. It doesn't need to exist. And that's been the conversation until we were able to start showing in trailers and bits and pieces that this film has a lot of heart and it has a lot of respect for the fans and for the source material. So from the start, it was just a discussion of, okay, if Universal Studios wants to remake this movie, not a story inspired by How to Train Your Dragon, not one that's based more on the books. They want to do this story. Well, then how do we capture the best of that story, but find places where we can be additive and we can bring more mythology, we can bring more depth of character, we can give a little more sort of backstory of characters like Astrid, who, in the animated movie is like, she's a little bit shortchanged. She didn't have as much screen time. And when we get into the action, how can we, dial it up and make it more engaging, more immersive? So these were areas where we thought we could add to the film without making, as he said, it's so lean, we didn't have to add a bunch of fat back onto a nice, clean story. And that was our goal. So hopefully as people start to see the film, they're reassured that, yeah, we didn't just go down some cynical road of remaking the movie so that a studio could make a bunch of money. Like, we really came at it with integrity.
It's funny, just experientially, there's a lot of people saying, I can't wait to see this movie. And then there's other people go, whoa, no, you can't beat the animated movie. And you kind of get that. But I feel like, and as I say, experientially, having sat through a few screenings now, I've yet to meet a person who did not come out going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's a whole other thing. And that was amazing. So I kind of feel almost like they'll see it and then they'll see it. And sometimes you can swear, I was thinking that yesterday, you can talk about a movie with words, but what does it really do to you when you're in there, and I think that it's almost like having a nice birthday present for somebody that you love, but you pretend you don't have a birthday present. You're like, sorry, I didn't get you. And then you go, because that's what I feel like we have. It's like a nice present waiting to be experienced. And I think I feel like it's our E.T., it's our Star Wars E.T. that we grew up with. That will be this movie for this.
Well, that's true. That's true. I actually watched both movies as an adult, and I mean, they're pretty cool. You can watch the first one as an adult and you get something from that. But this one, it feels deeper, just like you just said. And there's, it feels renewed, I'd say, So there are lots of things that could, they actually add to the experience. Yeah. Now, your there's the How to Train a Dragon 2 scheduled for 2027, right? So you're in the writing phase, right?
Yes.
Now, what about Stoic? What do you think? What would you think if there was an invitation to play a spin-off and be Stoic doing something else?
I would like to see maybe a Stoic that's been on a diet and is wearing lighter clothes, and it's more in the middle of summer, so he's just wearing vests. No, I never for a second considered the spin-off.
A surfer Stoic.
Surfer Stoic. Yeah. But that's not a bad idea. Spin-off. Immenso. Stoic immenso. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we gotta go. He's got a lot of writing to do.
Yeah, I know. But you told me that this is enough time for doing the second movie.
Just barely, yeah.
Barely.
The fact that they've announced that it's coming out in June of 2027 means we have to get going. So, we'll be moving at a clip for sure. But it's also nice to have the confidence from a studio to say, we believe so much in the movie that even though it hasn't come out into cinemas yet, we still want to make another one.
But they've watched it. If they've watched it, so, everybody who's watched the movie has liked it, right? I haven't, I've had the chance to watch it in a full, the cinema, the theater was pretty full, and everybody went out, they were very happy. So Everything's fine. So I understand why they would like to start writing second one, because this is going to be a blast. No question.
He wasn't there last night, but we got like 20 rounds of applause and cheering, and I was thinking when you were talking earlier, in terms of those comparisons, when you're in this movie, you're not thinking about the animated movie anymore. You're in this movie. You're in this story. You're with this hiccup. You're with this asterisk. You're with this toothless. And your jaw is dropping at what you see, the artistry, the creativity. I don't think that's gone once you're in there. I think it's a whole separate beast, dare I say.
Yeah.
Now, animating a movie and then having a live action one, you had to fight some imaginary dragons to fight them.
In my life.
No,
I'm talking about my life or the movie.
Well, let's talk about the movie, right? So, I suppose this is a completely different experience, but also directing animated movies also gives you what you need to do this one, I guess. Now, how does the VFX, how are they different from animating a movie and then bringing to live action? How does AI help you? Does it?
Well, we didn't use any AI in this movie. We used very, very talented and capable animators. And we used the visual effects wizards from a company called Frame Store, they did Harry Potter films and Fantastic Beasts and Paddington, really high quality stuff. And our animation supervisor, a guy named Glenn McIntosh, he comes from the Jurassic Park films. So lots of study of paleontology and large creature movement, how that factors into the performance. But the biggest challenge is now, how do you marry the very skillful animation with the live action actors? That's because we always have to shoot the elements with our actors and then incorporate the dragon animation. So one way that we worked, which was very effective, was we employed a team of puppeteers. A guy named Tom Wilton and his team would operate foam versions of the heads, which were designed to the same specifications as the digital dragons that would come in, but it gave the actors something to play with. They
weren't imaginary.
No, they were having a scene partner, and it wasn't just, here's the head, look at the head. They were actually performing. They were being the dragon in the shots. So our cinematographer always knew how he could frame for the shot. And our editor had something to cut, but the actors, more importantly, had something to perform with. They knew what they were reacting to, and so you had the attitude of the animal playing out in real time with the actors. And obviously with the flying, that was a whole other technical challenge, because we had to build a big contraption that could move on 6 different axes, and then there was a robotic dragon on top of it that had a body and head and neck that moved independently. So if Mason Thames, who plays Hiccup, was riding on the dragon, his movement would be affected by the movement of the dragon, like a jockey on a horse, on a racehorse. So that provided a very believable movement that we could then put together with the animation of the dragon in completing the shot.
Yeah. But I have to say, that was one of my biggest shocks about this movie, was that surprise, because typically that's something you got to create for yourself. You step into these worlds and you go, okay, this is the moment where I got to make everything up in my. But I was shocked by when I was performing with Toothless, and of course I didn't have to do anywhere near as much as Mason, the emotion that it brought out of me. The believability of this animal moving, and Tom was so great that I found myself going, you're in the performance, but you're also like, oh my God, I didn't think that I would be connecting like this with this thing. It helped immensely. And just I think I was just seeing a lot of things last night watching this again. And that is the brilliance of Mason as well, because Mason, so much of this movie was just him and that dragon, and having to make up so much of the story. And I know you pulled a lot out of it in terms of, it's not just that moment, but what else can you add to that moment and embellish it but to watch that performance and to see just the subtlety of communication as a boy meets something from another place, another time almost. And it's so forbidden. They just should never be connected. And then to see that trust start and then their language develop, their loyalty, their bond, their friendship, their love is incredible. I think and again, you see it, I think, more in this than you ever even did in the animated movies. And that's the central part of the story. I just think it's done so fantastically. One of those things was the puppeteering, but also in watching Mason perform and then Dean direct Mason. It was incredible to watch. And then you see the finished product. And it's really powerful stuff.
It is. And how would you, what do you think people, or what would you like people to feel or when they get out of the theater after watching the movie? Is there some message or a central or, I don't know, a theme that would you like to have people thinking about when they leave the theater?
For me, it's two things. I really hope that we create an experience that stirs all of your emotions and feels like a real crowd pleaser. You get to go to a place. So it is escapist fantasy. You get to live in a world for a little bit and be with these characters. And I hope that's a welcome escape in today's world. But hopefully what you take away from it is that you can be an independent thinker, that you can defy the customs and the traditions and beliefs of your people and think for yourself, like especially today, where we're so quick to paint other cultures as villains. It's nice to be able to say, like, maybe look a little closer, maybe give somebody a chance, like try to understand the plights and the difficulties of others. And it just kind of opens your mind. It gives you a little bit more empathy. And so, Hiccup is a character for me. He's special because he represents all of the outsiders. And I grew up as an outsider. I know what it's like to not feel like you're part of, you don't fit in with the rest of the kids. You don't fit in with the expectations of your family, of your society. And so I think being strong enough to endure that mockery and that ridicule and still kind of follow what's in your heart and makes you different is a real strength. And it's what Stoic comes to appreciate about his son. Is that, he is Hiccup starts as the opposite of what he wants him to be, but he comes to recognize the strength in what makes this kid different. Yeah. And so you can change the world. You don't always have to change yourself to become what other people want you to be. You can stick to what you are and watch the world change around you.
And just to say, because, I think it's a beautiful message for the outsiders and their uniqueness. It's also a beautiful message for the insiders and maybe showing more compassion and empathy to the outsiders. What do the outsiders have to offer? And what am I getting if all I do is enforce my connection to the inside and my views on them? Because sometimes when you sit back and actually, let others experience or express themselves and those ideas, you get a lot more out of that, as a world. Like, this is what we need right now. By the way, it's something that I love about Dean in terms of his direction. There's no ego. Sometimes people in the back would be throwing in ideas. He'll take all those ideas. It doesn't mean he's going to say, just because he knows what he wants, but he's never threatened by that. It's like, I hear you. I hear this. I love there were a couple of moments in the editing where I was like, but I feel this. And I said, Dean, I'm so sorry. I know it gets so passionate. He goes, never feel sorry. It's the debate is what's beautiful about this, but it never gets personal, And that's, I think, what he displays as a human. And I think what this movie really displays too. It's for the outsiders, but it's for the insiders who you realize, for instance, in Stoic's journey, as you say, the power in being able to step above that and say, maybe I'm not right about this. Maybe it shouldn't be my way. And maybe, I should have a more wider perspective about my peers and also think, what am I doing to them? What when peers put that pressure on or parents or cultures, institutions, what is the impact of that? And maybe to kind of try and understand that, feel that, respect that, appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah. So think for yourself. That's very important. I say that pretty much every day in my show, you know?
Great.
Now, I suppose you love dragons, right? So, do you see, not just for the fun of it, okay? Which crossover with another, I don't know, maybe Game of Thrones or other IPs with dragons, which one would fit the world of How to Train Your Dragon, but just for the fun?
I think Dragon Slayer is one, because Vermithrax, that dragon, was quite exciting and inspiring to most of us that grew up with fantasy films. That remains a really cool one. But certainly of recent times, I think Game of Thrones, both what we were doing in animation and for more of a family audience, and what Game of Thrones was doing for a more mature audience, kind of brought back the fantasy element of dragons, where it had become tired. You know, with movies like Aragon, it was like, okay, maybe we could put dragons aside for a while. It brought them back, you know, in a way that made them exciting again.
Yeah, I guess. What about you?
Game of Thrones, definitely. But then to go beyond dragon, I mentioned E.T. It's not quite a dragon, but I think that the relationship is so similar with a being, a creature from somewhere else, and that bond and that common connection, that universality of values touches me incredibly deeply, and I think it's part of the reason this resonates. I know my partner also, she loves Black Beauty, which is about a horse, but she keeps saying, watch this movie, and I get goosebumps, but it makes her think about Black Beauty, and I love whether it's a dragon, a horse, you know, an alien, a dog, you know, another human being, you know, or somebody from a different culture. Those are the ones that always, that I think always get you when you see, you know, maybe it's an American bonding with the Japanese, you know, or The Last Samurai, for instance. You go two different cultures, two different ways, respecting each other and finding a common ground. That is incredibly powerful to experience.
Nice. And Gerard is touching upon a theme for me that I love in movies. I think every one of my favorite movies has this common element, which is you have two characters from very disparate backgrounds, and they interact for a moment. It can be a very brief moment, but it's a finite moment. And at one point, they must go their separate ways, either through death or other circumstances. They come together and they go away, but they are always forevermore changed. You know, by that. So that's E.T. and Elliot. That's the Black Stallion. That's Harold and Maude. That's, you know, Titanic. That's like so many films where you say there's an experience that changes you forever. And it's Avatar. So true of life.
There's Avatar, the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that just
true.
Well, guys, thanks for this conversation. I loved it.
Thank you.
I feel very honored to have you here. Really. I told you before, right?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time. And I won't say good luck because you don't need it. For this one, at least, you don't.
I hope you're right.
Well,
I hope you're right. Thank you.